Welcome back to the Kino Cave, and today Costuming Chronicles is back, and today is the turn of Spider-Man. So a few months ago we got our first look at Tom Holland in his new costume for Spider-Man Brand New Day, and I have thoughts on it. I'll get to it at the very end, but first we gotta go through Spider-Man's costumes throughout film history. Now, I'm not going to be covering the Japanese version or the 70s version. Those were television shows, and that's a whole other kettle of fish. That's a whole other pot. And Tom Holland has like a million Spider-Man costumes. So we got to get into this and we got to get through it. So this is just the cinematic Spider-Man costumes, as well as a little dip into the comic book origins of the costume. If you've seen my Superman video, I'm doing the exact same thing. We got our first look at Superman. I talked about his costumes throughout film history, and now it's time to talk about Spider-Man throughout his film history, since we got our first look at that costume from Brand New Day. Starting off with the comics inspiration of Spider-Man's costume. Spider-Man was co-created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, and there is some dispute about this, as there always is with characters that are co-created by Stan Lee. There's, always this kind of discourse going on how much Stan Lee actually contributed to the creation of a lot of his characters. He definitely got 90% of the credit, always, and was happy to take it, but the scale skews over and back on how much involvement he actually had in the creation of a lot of these characters. For anybody who doesn't know, Marvel, in the comic books in the 60s, developed what's called the Marvel Method, which is the writer would give the artist a loose idea of the story. The artist would pencil the whole thing out, and then the writer would fill in dialogue. So it's really the artist coming up with the story, and then the writer just coming in and filling it with some dialogue. So, of course, Stan Lee deserves all the credit for coming up with the stories and coming up with the dialogue for these characters, and that's nothing to be sneezed at, okay? But a lot of the actual plot of these comic book stories were largely developed by the artists, and unfortunately they very seldom get the credit that they deserve. Now, let's talk about Spider-Man. So, Spider-Man was co-created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, although Jack Kirby claims to also have had involvement in the creation of Spider-Man as a character. The generally accepted opinion is that Stan Lee created the idea of the Spider-Man, and, he always talks about this. He saw a fly climbing up a wall one day, and, that gave him the idea. Jack Kirby created a design, but Lee wasn't very happy with it, so he went to Steve Ditko, and Ditko then added a web gun, which was a device that allowed Spider-Man to shoot webs. He added the idea of covering his entire face to add mystery to the character, which, of course, has developed into this wonderful idea that anybody can be Spider-Man because he doesn't have any visible skin on his body. So anybody, be they white person, a black person, an Asian person, a man, a woman, it doesn't matter. No matter what you look like, you can look like Spider-Man because his entire face and his entire body is covered in fabric. This is a character that nobody thought would be a hit. Again, if you don't know, Spider-Man first appeared in Amazing Fantasy 15, a dying book. It was a book that wasn't selling, and so when Stan Lee went to the editor of Marvel at the time and said, I created this character Spider-Man, can I put him in a comic book? The editor did not think it would do well, so he decided just put him into the last issue of this dying book, and we'll put it in the last issue, and that'll be that. And, he never expected it to go anywhere. So since nobody really expected this to go anywhere, the story gets muddled and chopped and changed, and depending on who you ask, a lot of people's opinions might sway them on who created this character. But Jack Kirby is more or less credited with the kind of design of the book Amazing Fantasy 15, but Steve Ditko is considered the artist co-creator of Spider-Man. So my opinion is that it was like 70 to 80% Steve Ditko, and then 30 to 40% was 20 to 30% was Lee and Kirby working in tandem. And that's kind of it, actually. I could not find much more on the original design of Spider-Man. I was hoping that we'd get more on why he was red and blue, on the web pattern on the suit, the lenses, all that kind of thing, and maybe that information is out there. If you have that information, please put it in the comments below with a credited source for it. because I would genuinely love to know. Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby died a long time ago, so there's not much information from them. They weren't really interviewed either at the time that much. All of this kind of information, most of it comes from Stan Lee himself. So it was hard to find a lot of information on the inspiration for specifically the costume. Obviously, there's tons of info about Spider-Man as a character. I'm talking specifically about the costume today, and there's not that much more information aside from all of that. With all of that out of the way, let's go to the movies and let's check out Spider-Man's costume in cinema, starting with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man from 2002. So Spider-Man is one of my favorite fictional characters of all time. He definitely was my favorite fictional character of all time as a kid, and it is because of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man from 2002. Cue all the, Spidey fans in the comments arguing about whether or not I'm just looking at it with rose-tinted glasses and, nostalgia is blinding me to how these films are actually worse than I remember and Tom Holland's Spider-Man is king. Okay, so let's talk about the costume. James Aitchison was the costume designer on Spider-Man 2002. He has featured in this video series before. He did the costuming for Daredevil and a bunch of other superhero properties in the 2000s. This guy was it. A lot of the design of this costume actually comes from the critical backlash to X-Men. X-Men came out in 2000, and everybody knows about this, the what do you expect yellow spandex meme and all that kind of thing, because the X-Men famously wore black leather costumes in those movies, largely because Bryan Singer, he thought that comic book costumes were silly and stupid, and how wrong he was. I actually quite like the design of the X-Men costumes, just splash a bit of colour on there and they work. But anyway, because of the backlash to that film, James Aitchison wanted to create a more comic booky costume for Spider-Man. He wanted to steer away from the black leather and wanted to make it more like the comic book character, and how right he was. James's goal was to pay respect to the icon of Spider-Man, so he studied the comic books from every era of Spider-Man up to that point and really wanted to create the ultimate Spider-Man costume. And you can see a lot of that influence. You can see Ditko, you can see John Romita, you can see the Todd McFarlane style a little bit in there with the webs, I think. You can see a lot of every kind of Spider-Man from 1963, I believe, up to 2002. For the painting of the suit, they used a process called silk screening, which I could not for the life of me begin to explain to you because I forget every time I learn what it is. But the way they did this method so that it could stretch and still hold its color and texture. To add more texture to the suit, they did the raised webbing. There's a few reasons posited for this. Another reason I heard is that the raised webbing would help the suit be seen on camera better because, cameras back in 2002 weren't as solid as they were now, and just a black line on the suit wouldn't show up very well, so that's why they did the raised webbing. And also to add texture, so they say anyway. And I think no matter the reason why they did the raised webbing, I think this is incredible as a look for Spider-Man, because it's so distinct while paying tribute to the icon of Spider-Man and paying respect to every era of Spider-Man. This has also now developed its own style for Spider-Man that is unique to film. You can't really do raised webbing. You cannot really do raised webbing in a comic book. You can, but it doesn't really work. It'll still look flat. It'll still look flat on his body. So this is really a technique that is unique to the movies. You can't really do this in any other medium and have it work the same. So I think that's just fantastic. Can you tell that this is one of my favorite superhero costumes of all time? So the actual producing and creation of the costume fell to Studio ADI, specifically Tom Woodruff from Studio ADI. The muscles had to be... There is also a muscle suit, as there is with pretty much every superhero costume. No matter how buff an actor gets, muscles don't look like muscles in a costume. There always has to be a little muscle suit to provide some extra padding, otherwise it doesn't look right. So that muscle suit was developed and painted the same color as the suit, so that when the fabric stretched, you wouldn't see through it and just see some foam latex underneath. The lenses for the eyes did present a challenge though, as they would obviously fog up when the actors would breathe in the suit. They didn't want to have an actor take off the entire suit just to unfog the lenses, so their solution to this was to have the lenses attached with magnets, and so whenever the lenses would fog up or if there was ever a problem with the actor's breathing or anything, you could just pop the lenses out and we could unfog the lenses, and then the actor doesn't have to take off the entire apparatus just to do basic things like unfogged lenses. And that is all the information I found on the development of the costume from Spider-Man. What can I say about this costume? It's the perfect superhero costume. It was adapted perfectly into film. It's classic. It's recognizable. You know the thing that they say all the time where, a character works when a child can draw it from memory and someone else can recognize who that is. This is that with this Spider-Man costume, absolutely. I know because I was a child who loved this movie and I would draw Spider-Man all the time, specifically this version, and I would always fuck up the raised webbing because you can't just draw the webs on, you gotta do gaps. It was a nightmare as a 5-year-old, trust me. So yeah, I think this superhero suit is basically perfect, but there were improvements to be made. Enter Spider-Man 2. Now you might be thinking, Mister Kino, this suit is exactly the same, right? The Raimi Spider-Man trilogy has the exact same Spider-Man costume throughout all 3 movies. Well, you'd be wrong. They did make small changes to the eyes and the logos and the colors. You know, there's always room to improve with these Spider-Man costumes, and there are a few aspects of the 2002 costume that I do prefer. I do like the logo on the back. It looks a bit more like the comic books, and the logo on the front, I think the size was kind of perfect with that one. Although I understand a lot of the changes they made, and the one I agree with the most is the colors. You know, under certain lighting, the 2002 suit can look a little orange, and the colors don't quite match very well. I think making them a bit deeper, a bit of a deeper red and a bit of a darker blue, I think it absolutely works. So they wanted to make the spider logo larger and a bit more 3D to complement the suit. And while I prefer the size of the spider logo from Spider-Man 1, I think that the actual logo from Spider-Man 2 works a lot better design-wise. It's a bit thicker, it's a bit bulkier, it's a bit more recognizable, you can see it better on screen. So I definitely agree with the kind of making it bolder and more 3D. They also changed the face shell slightly so that the jaw could move a bit more. And an issue with some of these Spider-Man suits from up until kind of the Amazing Spider-Man 2 is that you either have to CGI Peter Parker's mouth to make the jaw move up and down, which is jarring, or you just have to have him talk wearing the face shell, which doesn't really look like it makes sense because you can't see his mouth move. Because, again, if you don't know, for every Spider-Man costume you kind of need to either CGI it, which they do with the Tom Holland suits, we'll get to it, or you have to put a face shell in there. Otherwise, you look like this. With all that said, let's move on to Spider-Man 3 from 2007. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't find much on the development of the black costume from Spider-Man 3. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I mean, it's the exact same, except a few design changes, which, you know, I think it was James Aitchison who did work on all 3. I'll correct myself in the video in editing if I'm wrong, but he just wanted it to look angrier and kind of buffer and bigger. And you can definitely tell if you look at the costumes side by side, you can see that the eyes are a little bit more angular. The spider logo is obviously bigger and more angular, and he's buffer and bigger in the suit. But otherwise, the exact same process was used to create the suit. Again, I don't know why I'm surprised and kind of disappointed by the lack of info on the black suit, because it's the exact same process, but just instead of red and blue, it's black. However, I will say, and there may be a bit of nostalgia creeping in here, but one of the best interpretations of the black suit just ever in any medium for Spider-Man. I fucking love this suit. I think it's perfect. Moving on from Sam Raimi, because we can never move on from Sam Raimi, but we have to, because we have to start talking about Mark Webb's The Amazing Spider-Man from 2012. And this is a suit with some controversy. Most people agree, right, that the suit from the Sam Raimi movies is pretty much perfect for its day. And even if you prefer, say, the Homecoming suit or the new one for Brand New Day, which a lot of people do, you can't ignore the brilliance of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, costume that Tobey Maguire wore. So this is the one that gets dogpiled all the time as being the worst one. At least until the Tom Holland movies. There's some rough looking suits in that. So yeah, Basketball Man and all those jokes aside, let's get into the development of this costume and the reasoning why a lot of it looks like that. I actually kind of like this suit, just heads up. So this costume was designed by Kim Barrett, and the kind of modus operandi with this, and kind of the way it was with a lot of aspects of this movie, which is definitely taken from like Batman Begins and all that, is that they wanted this suit to make it look like Peter had made it himself. And, you know, Mark Webb stated that he wanted it to look like it was designed in a computer. So, for example, the lenses were designed by a company that made sunglasses for the US military. And you can definitely see that in the lenses here. I do like a lot of this suit because it looks like you can make it yourself, and obviously, what does every kid want to do? I know that when I was 10 years old and I saw this movie in the cinema, I thought, I could make a suit that looks like that. You know, when you see the shoes and you see that they're just soles cut out from runners, I thought, well, I can do that. And then my parents immediately shot that down because they weren't spending a ton of money on shoes just for me to cut them up. And with the webbing as well, Kim Barrett wanted it to look like a spider's web was actually wrapping itself around him. So instead of being this like intricate kind of pattern, like in the Raimi movies and the comic books and all that kind of thing, it looks messy. It looks like someone has like thrown a spider web at him, or a spider has been like crawling all over his body and making the web as it goes. And I really like that idea. I like that philosophy. And obviously it's a little bit kind of over designed, and like there's kind of messiness to it, and there's lines all over it because it's, I mean, it's, you can see it in the film when he's developing the costume. It's exercise gear. Like it's a onesie that, like, you know, people use in the Tour de France. And finally, with the web shooters, obviously there were no web shooters in Spider-Man from 2002. I think possibly because Sam Raimi just thought, how can this kid develop a chemical that looks like webbing? But, you know, they explain it away in this movie, and obviously the design, it looks like a watch, a wristwatch. He's redeveloped a wristwatch and, you know, a few other bits and bobs that he probably had in his garage, and developed the web shooter from that, which I really love. I love this web shooter. I think it might still be my favorite one. I like the homemade one from Spider-Man Homecoming. I don't really like the Stark Tech ones that we see later in the MCU. And the ones in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 are very cool looking, but I just love the kind of bashed together look of the ones from The Amazing Spider-Man. Again, it looks like you can make it yourself. And I love how when he's in his civilian clothes, then they do just look like wristwatches, because they've got like little leather straps on them and stuff. So yeah, I actually really like this suit. The more I talk about this suit, and the more I look at the notes I made like a month ago when the Brand New Day costume got leaked, yeah, look, I've been busy, guys. But the more I read back on my notes, the more this suit does grow on me. I do really like it. I like the texture of it. I like how it's very different from the Sam Raimi costume. I like how it looks like you could make it yourself, or at least make something that looks like that. Like, you could walk into a sporting store, get a red and blue, like, exercise onesie, I guess. I don't know. I don't, like, ride, like, BMX bikes or something. I don't do any of that shit. You could buy a pair of sunglasses and make these lenses and stuff like that. So I really like it. On to The Amazing Spider-Man 2. For the longest time, people considered this the best Spider-Man costume, and it's easy to see why. They bring back a lot of the stuff that worked from the Raimi movies, like the raised webbing and things, but they made it black, more like the comic books. They made the eyes big and the lenses like a really pure white. They were kind of yellowish in The Amazing Spider-Man, and they were kind of like a silvery shade in Spider-Man 2 and, you know, the Raimi movies. But they're stark white in this movie, and yeah, like, I can see why the colors are perfect on this costume. I do have my problems with it. The spider is too big. It's too big. It like runs down the suit too much. You know, there's other kind of issues. I think like there's weird kind of patterns on it, like the way the like kind of belt and stuff is organized, and the webbing it's too busy. The webbing is a little bit too busy for my taste, but you know, a lot of this works as well. The spider on the back, I think, is perfect. The colors are perfect. The raised black webbing is a perfect marrying of what they did in the Raimi movies and from the comics and The Amazing Spider-Man and all that. So yeah, I love this suit. And there's not a ton of info on this one. Deborah Lynn Scott was the costume designer, and her and Mark Webb just wanted to bring back the classic look of Spidey. You know, this was kind of in an era, like, Mark Webb it's been said and documented and stuff, but Mark Webb was really strong armed into making this movie more like the Avengers and stuff like that, and doing sequel setup and universe setup and all that. So I think they probably did go to him and go make it look more like the Avengers costumes. Like I get a lot of Captain America from the Avengers vibes from this costume. And Deborah Lynn Scott wanted the eyes to look kind of friendlier and less angry, like they do in the comic books. So, that's why they're all big and white. And again, I think that totally works. Moving on from Andrew Garfield's iteration of Spider-Man, we're into the Tom Holland era. We're in the MCU, and there is a long way to go. Let's go with Captain... Oh, God. Let's move on to Captain America Civil War. Judiana Makovsky was the costume designer on Captain America Civil War. I am so sorry. I'm really sorry if I mispronounced your name. I like the costumes in Captain America Civil War. Now, unfortunately, while she is the costume designer, at this point in the MCU, Marvel was in control. They were making a lot of the creative decisions with a lot of these characters, and that extended to the costumes. Enter Ryan Meinerding. Who has appeared in the video series before with Daredevil, and he did a lot of the design work on the Daredevil TV series, and he's designed most of these MCU costumes. Love him or hate him, this guy's the reason. Please don't harass him on Twitter. So he is the head of visual arts at Marvel, so he is the head honcho of designing all of these suits. He reports directly to Kevin Feige. So the modus operandi with this costume, which is our red and blue costume with the black bands on it. That's the one I'm referring to. This is going to get messy. They wanted the suit to look simple with nice simple textures, and they wanted to use CGI to smooth out any of the wrinkles, which in my view is a big mistake. It looks fake, it looks like a cartoon, and not even a good cartoon, not a cartoon I'd watch. Look, I'm going to be a bit critical. I'm not a fan of MCU Spider-Man. Yes, I'm in that camp, okay? I think there's a lot of problems, and to be honest, a lot of problems with these costumes in particular. I think there's some good stuff in Spider-Man Homecoming and in Spider-Man No Way Home. We're not going to talk about Far From Home outside of the costumes today. But I'm pretty critical of MCU Spider-Man, especially when it comes to costumes, because costumes are a very big deal to me. I am all about that. I am all about how movie costumes look. I have opinions. That's why, this is probably why this is the video series that has done reasonably well on this channel so far, because I am passionate about costuming in movies, and the MCU has not been getting it right. The black bands were added to MCU Spider-Man's suit to make it look a bit more high-tech as well. Again, big mistake in my view. Why is it a Stark suit? Why is it a clothy Iron Man suit? Anyway, I better stop. Moving on from that, let's go to Spider-Man Homecoming from 2017, and a costume that I actually like from MCU Spider-Man because it looks like it was actually... It looks like it's real, and it looks like it was made by a 15-year-old kid. The homemade suit. So Meinerding was once again in charge of the design, but the costume designer credited in the movie is Louise Frogley. So big ups to her. I can't imagine being a costume designer on one of these movies, and rather than actually designing these iconic superhero costumes like James Aitchison did and Kim Barrett did, you're basically just handed a piece of concept art from a dude at Marvel and told make that. The homemade suit was inspired by the Ben Reilly costume from the Spider-Man comic books, and yeah, that's pretty obvious. It's a hoodie, and it's like a sleeveless hoodie with a kind of exercise jumper underneath it. And that is all the information I have on the homemade suit from Spider-Man Homecoming. Yeah, the information on these costumes get less and less. Bring back behind-the-scenes stuff in movies, please. Especially for stuff like this, it makes it very difficult to discuss these like costumes and behind the scenes aspects of these superhero stuff when you have to go rooting through Twitter replies to find design inspirations, okay? Just give me an hour long like behind the scenes thing where they discuss the costume, okay? Release the meeting that they had for Daredevil 2003 where they spent 45 minutes talking about the color red. Anyway, I like the homemade suit. I think it's good. It looks kit bashed together by a kid, even more so than the Amazing Spider-Man suit. Again, a lot of people did just make this. when Spider-Man Homecoming came out, because you're taking a red hoodie and drawing a spider logo on it with a Sharpie and then putting it over blue sweats. So yeah, I like it. And also it's good for kids. It's good that, a kid who can't afford really nice Spider-Man costume from like a shop or an online shop. It's nice that like a kid who has very little money, like Spider-Man, could just get a red hoodie and draw a spider logo on it and go trick-or-treating in it. Avengers Infinity War. The laughing stock of Spider-Man costumes, the Iron Spider suit. Ian Erding is back, and he actually wanted a more classic Iron Spider suit, that red and gold, really, really nice looking suit from Civil War, the comic book. But he seemed to be vetoed on that, and they wanted the red and blue, but metal. Which it is. And it looks fucking terrible. The colors are awful. It doesn't really make sense. It's all nanotech. The webbing is like creases or not creases. It's like, indents in the suit rather than being lines. It's too busy. It's overcomplicated. I better shut up. I've been ragging on MCU too much in this video already. I gotta do like Costuming Chronicles on something like far away from the MCU next time, don't I? Spider-Man Far From Home. Let's get this over with. Costume designer credited is Anna B. Shepard, but come on, we all know that our boy Ryan is in here designing the night monkey suit. The black and red suit. I actually quite like the black and red suit when it's not in the movie. When he's wearing it in behind the scenes and stuff on promotion, and when he's, visiting Make-A-Wish kids, it looks amazing. In the movie, it looks like a cartoon. So the original idea for this suit, which is actually pretty interesting, is that Peter would make the suit out of webs and then the Stark tech would cover it and be added to it. That's a really interesting idea, and I kind of wish that they did that, but they didn't. They wanted, next Iron Man. And the Night Monkey suit is based on Spider-Man Noir. And that's all the information from Spider-Man Far From Home. Let's move on. Spider-Man No Way Home. So, the boys are back. And the suits are exactly the same, except they've been covered with CGI. Yay! Costume designer credited is Sanya Milkovich Hayes. I am so sorry. And again, none of this is your fault. So the black and gold suit, like the inside out suit, was obviously made to sell toys. No further information needed. The integrated suit, there's no information on the design of it or why they made it like that. It's busy, it's over-designed, it's terrible. They did have to recreate Toby and Andrew's costumes, presumably using original models and all that kind of thing. So at least they put that much work in, and they didn't have to wear the old crusty suits from 2004 and 2014. And the final swingsuit is entirely VFX. I like the final swingsuit. I like how shiny the blue is on it, and I think the red is very good. I like how it's clearly been inspired by Toby and Andrew's costumes, and you see that more in the Brand New Day suit as well. I really like the final swingsuit, and I know that the one from Brand New Day is technically different, but it's more or less the same. And with that being said, let's just talk about the Brand New Day suit. So Sanya is back for the Brand New Day thing. It doesn't really matter. Ryan Mienerding. Fucking hell, that name is a hard one to pronounce. Ryan Mienerding most likely has designed this suit as well. So Sanya, I hope you'll, make some kick-ass costumes for the supporting characters. Now, looking at this suit, I love it. It's easily the best Tom Holland Spider-Man costume by like a lot. Like genuinely, I don't think any Tom Holland Spider-Man costume goes above like a 6 out of 10 for me. This is like an 8 to 9 out of 10 suit. It's clean, it's simple, there's not overcomplicated like lines all over it. It's perfect. Don't paint over it with CGI. It looks real. People have said this online, but this looks like Spider-Man is real when you see these behind the scenes pictures. It's perfect. The lenses are nice and big and white. It's still got that Steve Ditko kind of angry eyes thing going on. The colors are perfect. The red and blue are perfect. The front logo is perfect. It's clean. It's simple. It looks inspired by the logo from the Raimi trilogy. A lot of the pattern on it looks like it's been inspired by Andrew Garfield's suit from Amazing Spider-Man 2. The raised webbing is perfect and it's nice and black and stuff. The logo on the back isn't perfect. I would have liked maybe something a little different, but I like it. I love a lot about this suit. It's really awesome. The web shooters look amazing. So just don't touch it with CGI. It's perfect. Don't change it. It's great. I cannot stress it enough. I really like this costume. And if I walk into that movie theater next year and it looks like a CGI cartoon monstrosity, I will scream. I'm kidding, I won't scream. But I will not be happy about it. With all that said, I probably did more complaining than I probably set out to do. Let's see how much of it is left in the video. I'll have to watch it back. But that was the history of Spider-Man costumes in cinema. Let me know down below what's your favorite Spider-Man costume. Any other information you have on any of the development of the Spider-Man costumes, please put it down below. I'd love to know. Please credit a source so that you're not just spreading misinformation. Leave a like on this video if you liked it. Christmas content is coming this year, I promise. Have a really great day, and I'll see you in the movies.